And we are live. Apparently, we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And today we're going to be covering exactly, I guess we're going to be covering answering your questions as it relates to starting and running either a home care or nursing staffing agency. And the reason why I'm having this Q&A is really to give you some insight into what we're going to be diving into deeply May 17th and 18th, right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which we're holding our very first seminar where we're teaching how can you grow a successful home care or medical staffing agency. It's myself and Sean, the Savvy Business Chick, who are going to be walking you through exactly how you could start one of these organizations and scale it up from zero all the way up to 8 figures. We both have experience growing our agencies from scratch, both in the medical staffing space and in the home care space, and we're going to be bouncing off of each other. We have slightly different styles and approaches, but very similar domain expertise, and I think it's going to be an awesome event. So this live is more or less a prelude to what you could expect as far as the quality of guidance that you're going to get. Now, for those of you who may not know, my name is Carl Pierre. I'm a healthcare entrepreneur. Fortunately, I got started at the tender age of 14, assisting my mom in our medical staffing company. We ended up starting a home care agency as well and grew that and led that organization as a CEO and president all the way up until $12 million. And from that point, I actually started to expand the business, added another layer by the name of Aidbook, which we are now on our way to growing a much larger portfolio. Our next target is $100 million. And if all goes well in this year, we should probably break the $50 to $60 million price point as long as some of these strategic acquisitions go through. So the reason why I mention that is to let you know where we've come from and where we're going and what you could expect. Now, we've grown organically from 0 to 12 million. We're still currently in the 8-figure mark. And I know how that looks from licensing all the way up until scaling an organization that's able to manage over 300 patients in the field. So I want to make sure that you know that whether you're an early starter, maybe you're at the $1 million price point, I'll be able to guide you all the way through that 100 million price point, which is the path that I am currently on. So the intention here is really for you to ask any question that has been on your mind. If you are already experienced in running your business or you're just getting started, here to answer your questions, and hopefully we could have a productive chat. For those of you who are on the live stream, please just let me know who's here. I see that there's 10 people signed in. We are broadcasting on LinkedIn, YouTube, and in both of our YouTube channels, my personal channel, Carl Pierre, and Passive Workforce as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to start adding them to the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to go to Instagram to answer a few questions. So the very first question is, how much funds are needed to start the business? Common question that we get asked. And the unfortunate answer is that it really depends. I'll talk to you more or less from both perspectives. I'll start with the home care perspective. The home care startup costs are going to vary significantly based on the state that you're in and what sort of organization you plan on starting. So if you are in a state that has no license, or as we call it, an unregulated state, you will have probably the lowest startup costs, especially if you're doing private pay or companion care, because there's going to be no licensing fee. All you're going to need to pay for upfront is setting up your company, putting together your website, just your basic branding kit, maybe getting some documentation in place, maybe paying for a consultant to help you with policy and procedures, or you're buying policies or you're buying documents. So I would say on the home care side, you're probably looking at at minimum anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to get started. And the reason for that is because you have to pay for insurance, you have to pay to host your website, you have to pay for that initial marketing material, those documents that I told you about. Most likely going to have to pay for your software. We ourselves have developed our own software that we license out to other agencies by the name of On Time. I'll put that in the description somewhere. But On Time is a complete practice management solution for home care agencies and medical staffing agencies. And in this day and age, you have to run your company on a EMR system. It's almost impossible to be paper-based, especially if you're going to be servicing Medicaid or Medicare clients, because it is federal law that you must have electronic verification of visits, and you're not going to be able to achieve that with paper. So with that being said, at minimum, you're looking at between $5,000 and $10,000 to get started if you're in an unregulated state. And then that price can go up just a little bit depending on application cost if it is a license-bearing state. And that cost can expand significantly if you look to get into skilled home healthcare, where different regions may have different thresholds for qualifying for Medicare, different financial thresholds, meaning that you have to have cash on hand and proof of cash on hand to meet those standards. For Florida, for example, you need around $100,000 that's going to sit in your account for about a year to a year and a half in order to even qualify to be able to provide Medicare services. They want to see that you have enough cash on hand to float your payroll, to float your services up until Medicare starts to reimburse you. So that number varies from state to state. Some states it's 10,000, some states it's 25,000. It really depends on what the requirements are for that state and what the state believes is the financial requirement that's needed. So again, as little as $5,000 to over $100,000 just to get started. So that's on the home care side. To answer the question on the medical staffing side, it's about the same. I would say that at minimum in an unregulated state, you're going to have to pay for the same sort of things: your basic insurance, your workers' comp, your general liability, some software, some documentation. You're going to probably work with a consultant to help you get started. So I would say at minimum, you doing a lot of the grunt work, you being frugal, again, $5,000 to $10,000. And then the number is going to go up depending on what sort of services you need. For example, we help clients get started, and our assistance is as little as $99 a month from a group mentoring standpoint to over $15,000 if we're going to be setting up your entire company. And it depends on your state and what sort of company you're forming. So just expect like the $5,000 to $10,000 to be like the most cost-effective way. And you could probably expect to pay between $20,000 and $30,000 to get set up realistically. And then there's only one extra thing that you have to concern yourself with, which is how much capital do you have on hand to cover your payroll. In home care and in medical staffing, you're going to need money to cover payroll because you're going to be most likely reimbursed on a delay. If you're working with insurance companies, they're going to be reimbursing you maybe 10 days out, 30 days out, 40 days out from the time that you rendered services. Same thing with medical staffing contracts. You might be on a 30-day or a 60-day payment cycle. So you're going to have to cover your employee cost for that time period. Okay. We have a question here. Wendy Hilaire, what's up? We have a question here coming from, I believe, YouTube. Why not start a franchise? Me, myself, or why not why not buy into a franchise to get started? Just clarify that question for me if you can. I'll stand by for a second. Me, okay. So we've looked into that and thought about it. And I'm not sure the franchise model is the way that I want to go, just because it's just another layer of regulation. So starting a franchise isn't as simple as saying, here's my brand, put it together, reproduce it. I believe there's federal filings, there's a lot that goes into it. And franchises generally make their money off of their franchise fees and the initial franchise selling point, the franchise fees, and then managing territories and limiting territories, and also charging you a royalty to use their brand likeness and image. So personally, I would rather not get that involved, um, mainly because I just I don't want the headaches. Honestly, I don't want the headaches of the people. Um, but I've thought about it because the learning curve would be greatly reduced. Some of the other franchises that I see, they don't really do a good job on developing their clients for the commercial side of things or the Medicaid side. They tend to focus on private pay exclusively. And another thing that I don't really like about the franchise model is that with the franchise model, you're selling territories, and I think it's too limiting, right? Even when you get licensed on a state level, you're going to start in a certain territory, but sometimes they break it down to. There was one franchise I was thinking about. There was a home care agency that had a franchise agreement, and I was thinking about buying that agency, and they restricted them to zip codes, not even the full county. It was partial, a section, a slice of Queens where they could operate. And to me, that just didn't make any sense. So I wouldn't want to make my money limiting where people could do business, because it's in my best interest to sell as many little parcels as possible. To me, that just seems kind of nonsensical, but it's certainly part of the franchise model is to sell territories and restrict. Um, so I don't think at this point in my life I'm going to do that. I'm more interested in helping people get started or acquiring other companies rather than creating this framework and then supporting that framework for the rest of my life. I kind of want to have an end to what I'm doing here. And for me, our end is to acquire, consolidate, grow, and see you later in the next 5 to 7 years. That's my trajectory for my final play in home healthcare. So to create a franchise, I would have to have the same mindset, create the franchise, sell as many units as possible, and then see you later. And I don't think that I wouldn't want to do that to whatever client I sell into that franchise or franchisee. So there's so many reasons why I wouldn't do it. Cool. So I'm going to go back to Instagram and see if there's any other questions that came in there. And in the meantime, if there's anything else that comes to mind, please let me know. So, how hard is it to build a Medicaid agency up from scratch with all the competition? This comes from Wessie. So, I would say moderately difficult, but not impossible. I think it's easier to build a Medicaid agency than it is to build a private pay agency, mainly because the patient has a payer that's paying for it, and it's not necessarily their money. So as long as they qualify for the services, they will seek services. So by comparison, you find plenty of people who don't qualify for Medicaid who need the service, but they can't afford the $30 to $40 an hour for services, right? They might need 40 hours a week at $30 an hour. That's $900, $3,600. At $30 an hour and 40 hours a week, that's $1,200 or $4,800 a month. They may have a real need, but their Social Security doesn't cover that. Their pension doesn't cover it. They still need to live. So when you're looking at the Medicaid landscape, I feel like there are more people that can qualify for Medicaid and that need the services and are looking to utilize their benefits to get services. And because of that, I don't think it's as competitive as the private paid landscape. The flip side of that is that the private pay landscape is far more profitable because you're usually going to charge a higher reimbursement rate than you would get from Medicaid, typically. And it's a different customer, different psychosocial demographics, completely different neighborhoods. So you when you really look at it, you have to kind of pick which lane you want to be in, and you could certainly service both, but I wouldn't look at it as being all this competition. The reality is that there are a lot of hard to service areas, especially when you start looking at some of the rural areas. And the industry is growing significantly. So by 2030, we're going to see a near doubling in home care spend from 120 to 200 billion annually. So the demand is picking up. So I wouldn't necessarily say that right now there's so much competition. There's enough business out there. What you're going to have to do as the home care agency is make sure that you improve your visibility and that people are aware that you exist in the marketplace. A misconception that people have is that, oh, I get licensed, I get enrolled with Medicaid, I'm officially a Medicaid provider, and all of a sudden patients are going to just start flocking towards you. No, you have to build relationships. You have to go out there and market. You have to educate the community on the entitlements that they have with their benefits. There's so many people who don't know that their Medicaid can cover their home care needs or how to get their Medicaid to cover their home care needs. They might be enrolled in the wrong plan that doesn't offer home care services, or it's more difficult to obtain home care services. So as the agency, it's your responsibility to position yourself for visibility, to be a leader in the space, and to capture market share. It's not going to happen just because you hunger sign. No business is like that. Okay, here's a good question. Gangsta of love. How much money can be made per year net in home health care? It could be negative, right? You could absolutely lose your shirt, and you can make millions of dollars. So what do you want me to tell you there? I think that in home health care, if you're dealing on the Medicaid front, you can expect to make between 10 and 15% net margin at the end of the year. Again, depends on your state, right? Some states are a little more friendly with their Medicaid programs and higher reimbursement, better margins, but typically that gets squeezed with time. But safe numbers, 10 to 15% net margin. When you start dealing with skilled home health care, or you're dealing with Medicare, you start to look at between 20 and 30% net margins. So if you're doing $1 million a year, Medicaid, you might be eking out 100, 150K after administrative costs, et cetera. If you're doing, like for example, $1 million in home care revenue, margins, like your gross margin of 18% after cost of goods and services, that's $180,000 operating budget. So that's the budget that you're going to be working with your staff. So at $1 million, you might be walking away with $180,000 to $200,000 operating budget. You still got to pay for your office, still have to pay for your software, still have to pay for your basic overhead, your utilities, et cetera. And then you're going to have your administrative staff. So if it's a two-man team, let's say husband and wife, 30 patients, you're doing about $1 million a year, you can manage that with two people, and that business is bringing $180,000, $200,000 into the household, right? That's not bad. You double that, now you're at 400 grand, and the numbers kind of eke up. So I would say those are the margins that you should be expecting Medicaid, about 15%. Skilled and skilled and private, you're going to be looking at 20, 30, even 40%, depending on what demographic you're targeting in private pay and what you're charging. So that's your range there. Gangsta Love, I'm a truck driver wanting to get off the business in the next 2 years, but I need to make net 150K a year. Well, if you're trying to make 150K a year, right? Like I said, that's going to be, let's just call it $1 million agency, Medicaid. If that's your goal, then I would say you're going to probably want to start that while trucking and get a partner that is going to be able to help kind of manage things until it gets to a point where you can jump in on a full-time basis. So you're looking at roughly maybe getting to $2 million in revenue, $2 to $3 million before you could even think about making that transition. And what your role could be in the meantime when you're trucking is like, you obviously you could have phone calls, right? So you might be someone who's dealing with a lot of the relationship building with referral sources via phone, while somebody else is kind of handling the office administration. And that might be how you started out. Other than that, your other option is to acquire, an operational company. So you might be able to find, a company that's doing $2-3 million in revenue, selling maybe for, I'd probably say at $2 million revenue, you might be able to get that between $800,000 and $1 million for sale. And even that might be too small to squeak out the 150 a year after debt cost. But that might be a better starting point because you're at least starting with some operational cash coming in. L'Avion. Been in aviation for over 25 years. I'm in the New York area. Plan on moving to Florida. I need to link with your company. Would love to start a business like this. Yeah, if you're looking to link up with us, let me just include the link down below. Passive workforce.com. What you could do there is you could reach out to our team, book a consultation call, get some guidance. There's plenty of free information over there as well. Get some guidance on how you could start one of these businesses and make sure that it's the right fit for you. How do you solve the chicken and egg problem where you have to have providers to get clients and clients to have providers? Yeah, you have to. It's just a dual-sided marketplace. You have to create both at the same time. So you should consistently be recruiting for caregivers and also for clients or providers. So how does this look? In reality, you're going to have to probably target friends and family first, right? On the worker side or on the client side. If you have people in your network that are providers or potential patients, you're going to want to let them know that you're in the business and maybe they might want to work with you. They're going to be a little more forgiving of your delays to get workers, right? Same thing with the workers. If the workers are friends, family, people in your network that are caregivers and healthcare providers, and they want to work with your staffing agency or they want to work with your home care agency, you let them know, hey, I'm coming to market. You onboard them. They're going to be more forgiving of how long it takes you to find them to work. When we started, for example, a lot of the initial nurses that we worked with in our medical staffing company, they were friends and family members. And they were friends of my mother or colleagues and family members. And they were picking up PRN or per diem shifts. So it's like, hey, I'm available for 2 nights a week or an extra day or a double shift on the weekends. And we worked with those people first because, again, they were just on standby and being supportive as friends and family members. And as we got contracts and we really saw what the need was, they became our recruiters, and bringing friends and all their family members in, and we were able to start advertising online. And this is in the day of like monster.com and the early days of using the internet to recruit. So we really counted on friends and family, people within our network, to help us recruit and find talent. But that's how it goes. You got to go with who you know, establish relationships, and you're working both ends until you're able to match. Yeah, 15%. It's a safe bet. Cool. Any other questions? Here we go. Andrew Chechi. Interesting. So kind of having nurses who want some extra work. Thanks. Yep. So yeah, no. Exactly. So if you have a nurse who's looking for extra time, you have to think about it. The psychology is different. Someone who needs a job because their contract is ending, or they just moved and they know that they need full-time employment, they want full-time work yesterday, right? But someone who's already employed and they're just looking to pick up extra time, they have their main gig and they're going to be open to these other PRN or other per diem sort of opportunities for them. So even if you have, not so many cases for them, or not so many shifts available for them, again, if you're home care or medical staffing, they're going to be willing to be on your roster for when things are available, because they might be aligned with a few different agencies with different pay rates and different opportunities. So they'll rather be on your roster and available to pick up work as needed. So again, you could be forthcoming and say, hey, this is our pipeline right now, or we're working on getting more contracts. It helps to have you onboarded completely so that when opportunities arise, we're able to deliver right away. Because if you're just interested and on standby and a shift opens up this weekend, we can't go through getting your documents, reviewing your physical. Oh my God, your TB test has expired. We have to get a new one. It's a 2-step test. You're not going to be able to react fast enough, and we might miss those opportunities. So let's completely onboard you now so that we have a completed profile on you and that you're ready to work, so that when the opportunities arise, I call you first and there's no delay. So that's how you deal with that. And you just tell them, I'm working on getting more. So, but in order for me to work on getting more, I need to have people. And you being on my roster helps me sell a little bit more. It gives me even confidence to go out there and say, hey, I have this excellent nurse ready to go, available weekends. So that's kind of how you would go about that, and making sure that, you're working both sides of things, right? Because if you have a contract with a bunch of shifts, you promote, I got a contract with a bunch of shifts. These are the shifts that are available, work for me. This is what we pay. And people are going to respond to that, the workers. If you have a bunch of workers ready to work and their availability, then when you're selling to patients or providers, you're leading with, I have this roster of people that I've cultivated ready to work. Does this match your needs? Yes or no? That gets a conversation going on contracting. So, those are the things that you do. You have to do both. You have to do both. Do you have any other questions? Let's see if anything else came in through IG. Yep, we got another question here. Wessie. How do you feel about the paid family caregiver programs versus hiring CNA? That's a really good question. So there's what's called the consumer directed. So they're typically consumer directed programs where you could hire as a patient. You could hire a family member to be your caregiver. I've never liked the program. And the reason why I've never liked the program is because I think it's a hotbed for fraud. And think about it. If grandma's hiring their grandchild, and she cuts out of work early on a Friday night to go out, and she's the one signing the timesheet, what do you do? Right? Like, they're going to cover for their granddaughter or whoever and milk the system. So I never liked the program for that reason, because it eliminates your control over ensuring that they're getting the services that they need. When you're hiring CNAs, HHAs, PCAs, actual certified caregivers, they don't necessarily have the same relationship with the patient. The patient's going to actually demand that they get their services, even if it's short 15 minutes. They're going to want their services. So I never liked it for that. Where I think the consumer-directed programs are really useful and helpful are for niche ethnic groups, because it's going to be harder. Like, right now we service quite a few people from the South Asian community, whether it's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And languages can be a challenge. Religion can be a challenge. Those cultural nuances are challenging. And to find a certified caregiver in those communities that's available to do the work can sometimes pose a challenge. It also can be very helpful in rural areas where there aren't as many people, and hey, the neighbor can take care of me. She takes care of me anyway. She does my errands. She picks up my drugs. Why not pay that person for that? So in certain situations, it's really helpful, as I just described. But the problem is, when you start to promote the program as to get taken care of by your family members, people start saying, oh, okay, well, how much are they paying? $20 an hour. Well, this person isn't doing anything. And I got Medicaid, so let me put them on and let's split the money. Like, all these sort of things happen. So you need to put protections in place. Like, ultimately that falls on the patient, because if the patient's committing fraud, they can lose their benefits for life. They could be incarcerated, etc. So the responsibility falls on them. But then you need to be doing your part to kind of investigate and report the fraud and whatever. But now, if you do that, you lose revenue, right? So you're also incentivized to turn a blind eye. For all those reasons, I've typically stayed away from those programs. And just because I don't want to be in some sort of fraud suit 3 years from now, because Medicaid is trying to recover money. When you say home care, are you speaking of residential ALFs? No, Tulip. When I'm speaking about home care, I'm speaking about home care agencies that are providing services in the homes of patients. Now, a home care agency can provide staff to residential ALFs. Sometimes the residential ALFs must have a partnership or ownership in common with a home care agency. But what I'm referring to is the more traditional structure of, there's a person in the community who lives in their home who requires personal care assistance or assistance with activities of daily living. That's what I'm referring to as home care. Can that occur in a residential ALF? Yes. Can that occur in a ALF, like a larger ALF? Yes. Sometimes they subcontract out services to private home care agencies or state home care agencies. So that's what I mean by that. Now, from your point of view, out of staffing agency or home care agency, which one out of those two is easier to manage and get good return? I think that's relative to the operator. I think that a staffing agency, a medical staffing agency, is easier to operate in that you're only dealing, it's a business to business service. So you're dealing with the facilities that you're providing staff to and the workers. Once you go into home care, you got to deal with way more people. You have to deal with the patients directly. Typically, I deal with the state and its oversight. You have to deal with your referral sources. You have to deal with the insurance payers. And then you have to deal with the family members of the patient. And then you have to deal with the caregivers too. So it's more moving parts when you're running a home care agency. For us, that's why I always tend to recommend starting with a medical staffing company. Like, for example, our clients, they'll come to us and say, I'm on the fence between home care and medical staffing. I don't know which one I want to do. My first question to them is, well, do you really want to be a caregiver and overseeing the care of a client, doing case management? Is that something that interests you? If you don't care for caring, then it's probably not the path for you to go down. Our journey started as a medical staffing company. So you're dealing with providing facilities to contract with, hiring the staff, managing schedules, managing payroll, managing billing. All those things have to happen when you have a home care agency, but now you have to manage the patient, the insurers, you have to manage the referral sources, you have to manage the family members and the caregivers, and you have to manage your relationship with the state or the accreditation body that's accrediting, that you have accreditation with. So you got to pick which one you want. Now, is one more profitable? Medical staffing generally can be more profitable than home care from a margin perspective. But I think home care agencies do better with scale because the clients are stickier. We have clients on service for over 7 years. You're almost never going to have a medical staffing contract with one worker and one facility for 7 years. It's never happened with us, right? There's way more turnover. They might be term-specific contracts. Scaled home healthcare is almost the same because a lot of scaled home healthcare is episodic, meaning those patients are with you 30 days, 60 days, they get treated, they recover, they're off your census. So there's constant churn in getting new patients or new contract opportunities. When it comes to home care, especially when you're doing long-term care, there's less patient churn. So you could build out a better book and scale that business, in my opinion, better. With skilled home care, you have to build your marketing team substantially and build your referral base because, like I said, it's episodic. So you need way more referral sources, constantly growing your referral sources, constantly growing your payer network so that you get more admissions, or you have to expand your territory. Meanwhile, when it's home care or non-skilled home care, you got to do the same thing, but those patients stick longer, right? Because oftentimes they're with you until end of life or until they have to go into a facility because their services can no longer be supported in the home. So again, it's kind of a matter of what's more important to you. Are you more kind of you're okay with the churn and you like the higher margin, or do you prefer the low churn and lower margin? I kind of prefer the low churn and lower margin because it's predictable recurring revenue. Awesome. Awesome. So just having a roster of nurses on standby, and sorry if you already answered this already, but what does the upfront investment look like as far as supplies for nurses? Again, it depends on, are we talking about medical home care or skilled home care? Are we talking about running a medical staffing firm? So that depends. Do you hire a third-party billing company / RCM company? I'm actually a partner in a third-party billing company and back office company. So we utilize our resources for our billing purposes. And then we obviously contract with the companies that are using our software. So, for example, clients that are using our software on time, we will connect them with our billing and back office team for add-on services, and they will do concierge billing, payroll, and financial services, fractional CFO services, the full gambit. So again, depends on what your needs are. It might be cheaper for you to go that rate in the beginning, and after you are doing $5 or $10 million plus a year, this might start making sense to bring that team in house. They also could give dedicated resources, so it really depends. I think early on, working with third party is probably the best route because they will collect better. I've seen so many agencies that are just getting started and they haven't collected on their billing for 3 months, 6 months, because they just don't know how to do medical billing. And they're submitting claims, they're getting rejected. That happens. So to avoid that scenario, I always recommend working with our resources because they know what they're doing and they're going to get you your money, which is why you're in business in the first place. But at a certain point, it sometimes makes sense to bring billing in-house or to work out a different arrangement. Because again, as it's, you're doing 10 million a year and 2% on 10 million of your, that might be the number, 2% on 10 million, you're paying $200,000 a year on your billing team. When the numbers start looking like that, you're able to negotiate better terms where you can get dedicated resources and bring that expense down. So all depends. Gigs of Love. Are you still doing vacation homes in Italy for it? Yes, of course. Can I reach out to you on the same site you posted earlier? No. If you're interested, like we have 2 seats open on one of the deals that we're doing in Italy. If you're interested, I'm trying to close that out by next week. We have 2 seats available. Email invest@entplife.com and we'll get over an investor's deck to you and information on the opportunity. But we're trying to close that out next week. How do I make my home healthcare agency stand out? I would say one of the best things that you can do to make your home healthcare agency stand out is that you could actually provide a good service. And that's really a good service to your 2 clients. And what I mean by your 2 clients is that you have to service your caregivers well, and then you have to service whoever your referral sources are well, making sure you answer their calls, making sure that they're in the communication loop, responding to their questions, educating them on various things, right? So if you spend time providing like financial education to your workers, right, or improving their benefits or explaining their benefits to them, why is it beneficial for them to automatically enroll in the company sponsored 401k plan? What are they doing for their retirement planning? How could they use their retirement planning to potentially pay for their children's tuition when they go to college? A lot of agencies don't really care about what happens with the caregivers. They just care that they execute the work. So if you're able to demonstrate to your caregivers and to your clients or to your referral sources that you're responsive, that you actually care about what's going on, that when they call you, you answer, that when you treat, there's improvements, you become reliable and you begin to stand out. Another thing that you can do to stand out is that you have to emerge as a community leader. And what I mean by that is that the community needs to know that you're the go-to for whatever sort of assistance that you provide because you do such an incredible job. You need to get yourself in front of the people that may utilize your services, again, as a direct patient or as the referral source. And you want to make sure that they know that you exist, what specialties, what insurance plans do you accept, and ultimately, how can you make that referral source's life easier when it comes to the referral process and their work, as well as the outcomes for the clients that they're referring to you. A referral source doesn't want to make a referral to you and then receive a call from the client saying, no one showed up from the agency, or the agency is treating me badly, right? Because that hurts their reputation. It's an extra phone call that they definitely don't want to get, right? So by making sure that you're servicing properly and you're keeping those referral sources, so you're keeping your clients informed and satisfied, goes so much further than any ad can. The best referral is word of mouth. How many things have you bought because a family member told you this is a good product? How many times have you gone with a cell phone provider or cable provider because someone said this is the way to go? Word of mouth referrals hold so much more weight than any kind of paid advertisement does. So you want to make sure that people count on you, you're useful. That's what makes you stand out. You're welcome. Haben. Brother, one of my favorite channels right now. Thank you. So much value and so much information. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Andrew, okay. Medical home care. I would highly recommend that you work with a third party. Where are you based? I'm going to put in the link for our preferred partners, which is www.healthcarebackoffices.com. And if you reach out to them, they could get you, they'll do a discovery call, kind of talk through what your needs are. If you can, just tell me a little bit about what your needs are. What state are you in? What sort of services are you providing? What sort of difficulty are you facing? Is it Medicare? Is it commercial plans? Any sort of feedback would be helpful there, because then I'll be able to tell you like what makes the most sense. Let me see if there's any other questions from Instagram. Wesley got another question, dope. Have you had more success on the ground marketing or online marketing? We have had far more success with on the ground marketing, because healthcare is very much so a relationships business. So being likable, being relatable, being there to talk, meet, goes way further than an ad. The thing that online marketing does for you is that it helps you be seen more. And another thing in online marketing for home care agencies, you really have to focus on filtering that lead to the right place, because oftentimes you're going to get a lot of traffic from people looking for work or other service providers. So your ad spend is going to get burned by people looking for jobs when you're looking for revenue, right? So you have to have a good filtering system when people click through, first of all, from the keywords that you're using to what happens once they click through your ad, so that you're able to route them perfectly. Are you looking for work, or are you looking for someone to provide care? Right? That should be the first filter. And then filter now whatever the funnel is that you've created, because caregivers are needed. So if you're able to turn that click into a employee that is working for you, you're going to generate revenue on that employee. So you should have something that captures more information. Where you're located? Do you drive? have, what is your availability? Get all the screening questions done, collect their information, and then that lead should be routed to your human resource team or your recruitment team. Then when it's an actual lead for a patient, it should be routed, who's your payer, how soon are you looking to start services, how many hours of services do you think that you need per week, when are you free to meet with one of our nurses to have a discovery call or whatever. So with online, you got to spend a lot of money, and like I said, you're going to get a lot of maybe junk leads. But when you could build a home care business on 2 good referral sources. And what I mean by build it, you could grow to $3, $5, $6 million on 2 referral sources. 2 doctors that love you, that keep routing patients to you because you're helping. 2 brokers who get all these Medicaid inquiries. They sell Medicare Advantage plans, but they get all these Medicaid inquiries, and now they could sell you these leads that they really didn't have much use for, but they're getting the calls, right? 1 doctor and 1 community kind of activist or broker could build your home care agency. 2 referrals a week, 2 starts a week. In a year is 100 patients. 100 patients, you're looking at $3 to $5 million in annual rev, depending on hours, average case mix. So you don't need a lot, but you need to make a consistent effort, and you need to reevaluate what's working and what's not. Sean is going to be co-hosting or co-headlining the event that we're having here in Fort Lauderdale. As I mentioned at the top of the call, next Friday and Saturday, we're doing a 2-day seminar where we're teaching you everything that we possibly can in a span of 2 days on how to start and scale these businesses successfully. Sean started a scaled home healthcare agency, ended up concentrating on pediatrics, if I remember correctly, and started not as a healthcare professional, and was able to build out I believe it was over 7-figure home care agency, have a successful exit, and now due to non-competes and also maybe wanting to help other people, is on the education side, on the consultancy side, to help others kind of find that path. She loves to discuss marketing, and she really has, as someone who works in home care, and this is something that you'll see from people who are on social media who claim to do this. The people who have actually done it know what actually works. And in watching her, I've seen exactly how she approaches it. It's even simple things like creating low-cost kind of gift packages for like Nursing Week or breast cancer awareness, etc. Those little things start the conversation, reinforce relationships that can turn into $1 million pipelines. And if you've been in it and you've done it, you know what works. And based upon what she shares and how she approaches it, she's clearly knowledgeable. So if you want to learn from people like me and people like her on how you can go from I know nothing about this industry to generating millions of dollars in revenue, again, I highly recommend you going over to passiveworkforce.com, buy your tickets so that you could be in attendance, especially if you're in the southeast of the United States or southeast Florida. It's going to be easier for you to visit. Make sure you come out. There's going to be so much that you learn there. For the price that we're charging and the value that you're getting, I personally think that it's probably going to be one of the best for the dollar events that exist. And those who come and those who learn will probably attest to that. So Randy Rosales asked, how did the Aidbook investment round do, and what is the next plan for that business? So we did about $250,000 in the 3 months that we ran our campaign on Start Engine. So it was a Reg CF crowdfunding round. And the next goals we have, we actually have one home care agency under contract, another that's under management agreement, and we have pipeline for 2 more deals, depending on how this works out with our equity partner. But I'm going to give you a good explanation for those of you who want to hear this. So in order for us to execute on the acquisitions that we're doing, we're raising capital from private equity firms as an independent sponsor, meaning Aidbook and myself as a company are raising money from other companies to execute on our strategy of buying and consolidating home care agencies. One of the private equity firms that we have been in negotiations with want us not only to acquire the agency that we're acquiring, but they want us to get $60 million more of potential deals to bring together in one round. Why? Because they have a lot of money to deploy, and they don't want to spend too much time on a small deal. They want to get size quick. So it's quite a unique problem to have, because if the deal is too small, it's not worth their time in due diligence to pursue. They want to be able to deploy large amounts of capital to make significant impact and scale up that operation quickly. So if all goes well, and they decide to come on board, that would be a great equity partner. And by the end of this year, we should see roughly $60 million in add-on revenue. So that would be a great thing that happens. But that's what we're cooking. On the software side, we are rolling out 2 new services. One is to provide practice management for residential homeless shelters, and the other is an industry agnostic version of our software. So not only are we going to be able to provide services to home care agencies, medical staffing agencies, and adult daycare, we're going to be also a platform that can support homeless shelters and any industry where the worker is going to an assignment and there's a billable event. So that's what's in the pipeline. Long answer, but we got quite a few things cooking. Simp for Wendy. Is the event all day long? These both days? Yes. So it's full day Friday, full day Saturday, with breakfast and lunch catered, with snacks and coffee breaks in between. So there's 6 hours of educational time in Q&A daily, for the 2 days. And lastly on that, when does the window close to get tickets for the event? We're closing the window Thursday evening. So next Thursday, 5 p.m. should probably be the cutoff. That way we are able to prepare the last few kind of gift packets and everything that's needed for those last few people. So if you are interested, highly recommend you buy your tickets. As I said, just from my own story, every single seminar, conference, online course, just about everything that I've spent money on, I have learned something new. I've met incredible people that have done business with me or pointed me in a direction that I never thought I would be pointed in. And they've always been a value add. So at $899 for a 2-day seminar, I can almost guarantee that everybody in attendance will learn something that should multiply that investment by far. Now, I can't guarantee that you're going to go out there and take our 2-day seminar and hit $10 million in 2 years, but you certainly will be taught exactly how you could go from the idea to 8 figures in rev. And there's no question that you're going to learn something that you can apply. You're going to learn something that you might help you in your workplace. If you're working in a home care agency, you might be able to add value to your team because you bring a new idea or a new project to the table, a new way of recruiting, new tools to recruit. I really look at it as a can't lose scenario, because you either learn that this is not the business for you, or you learn something that's going to potentially change your life. So for $900, I think it's totally worth it. And you get an excuse to, come on down to sunny Southeast Florida, enjoy the beach, enjoy the nightlife, get the tax write-off, and learn something that could potentially change your life. Okay. So again, if you're interested in tickets, sorry, my head is cut off. If you're interested in tickets, make your way on over to passiveworkforce.com. If you click through, you will see the links and where to buy tickets, and come on down. Tons of interesting conversations will be had. Tons of strategies will be shared, and I'd love to see you there and meet some of you guys in person. Until the next time, take care and have a good night. Oh, hold on. I got one more from Sean. Frequently asked question: when can I buy my first Lambo? Are the business yields 40% profit margins? Well, I think the first Lambo realistically is probably 3 to 8 years out, depending on how hard you push. And I can almost guarantee that when you start looking at Lambos, you're going to say, well, 300 grand, that's going to be like 2 to 4 really solid marketing reps. And if they're able to produce, then, I could get the Lambo next year. I could get the Lambo in 2 years off of just the patient base that I add. And your mind is going to work that way. And you're going to kind of delay that Lambo purchase. 40% margins are possible, but not necessarily the norm. They can, you can find 40% margins, depending on who the payer is and what sort of service you provide and where it's at. But it's also not going to be easy to necessarily get the patients, and you may not get that contract right out the gate. So before you start fantasizing about Lambos, which are rapidly depreciating vehicles, you probably want to kind of firm up a business that can run independently of you being there, or even you get the Lambo after you exit, rather than waste that cash on a car. You could waste that cash growing your business so that it pays you for life. All right, guys, take care. Wait, I ignored your question. Okay. That question was already answered, but I'll answer you just so you don't feel played. So your starting cost minimum, you're looking at 5 to 10 grand. Realistically, 20 to 30 should be your expectation to get started. The right way, with the right help, with the right policies in place. Altogether, your insurance cost, maybe your application fees, etc. 20 to 30 is realistic. 5 to 10 is like you're really being frugal and kind of strategic about how you get started, and you can't afford to spend more than that. So those are your numbers, and it could be way more than that. Take care, guys. Good night.